for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing. I think it gives us an opportunity to look at what is clear a pervasive problem. I have not signed on to this particular solution, and I have a lot of questions. Probably the most notable question is, why is this not a joint hearing with the Intellectual Property and Courts Subcommittee, since clearly what we're talking about is negotiating over one organization's statutory intellectual property and finding a solution. But nevertheless, I'd like to talk primarily to the two witnesses who are here in person. Mr. Greenwald, I'm going to try to make this rapid. Mr. Travis, I'm sorry. Mr. Travis.
Been confused for worse, trust me.
Yeah. Mr. Travis, thank you. Have you ever read Atlas Shrugged or Fountainhead?
A long time ago, yes, sir.
Mr. Smith, I assume you have too.
Parts of it a long time ago, yeah.
Okay. Well, when I was listening to the witnesses, I heard, quite frankly, exactly that. Rather than the courts deciding an antitrust problem and solution, I heard government saying, and in the case of, I think both Graham Media and the News Guild, what they were saying was that we need to take an industry that is losing, and we need to give them money from an industry that is winning in order to preserve that industry that is going away. Notwithstanding whether that's right or wrong, did anyone hear anything differently here?
Well, what I would say is, while there may be an element of that, I think there are two dimensions that change the normal situation. Number one, we're talking about an industry that is suffering because of changes in competition that rightly can and should be addressed through antitrust law. And number two, we're not talking about just any industry under the sun.
And Mr. Smith, I appreciate that. But, one of my challenges is, in fact, that all the way back with Ayn Rand, we were taught a lesson, which is that when government starts to pick winners and losers, there's no end in sight. And that's one of my concerns here is, are we picking winners and losers? And I think we clearly are. Now, there's no question at all that these companies own their intellectual property, and in fact, we may want to give them additional rights to protect that property. And Mr. Smith, I'll pose a question to you. Currently, if Google searches your copyrights and makes that available, do you have any objection? Do you need to monetize any and all of your copyrighted material that they go through and create searches for? I'm talking about Microsoft's own copyrighted material.
We may not have objections with respect to the monetization or lack thereof for our content, but look, we're not in the news business. So I don't think that what is true for us actually is all that relevant.
Well, and let's go through the news for a moment, and we'll stick to news for a moment. In 1982, and I'll go to Mr. Greenwald. In 1982, the Cleveland Press went out of business, and Cleveland went from 2 daily newspapers to 1. Was that because of the internet, as far as you know?
No, the internet did not exist in 1982.
In fact, were newspapers diminishing and consolidating throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s rather than expanding, particularly the classic daily citywide newspaper?
I think to a large extent that is true. I think when you look, and the broader question that you're asking is, I think, a good one. Can you create and fix antitrust violations, which I think are existing from big tech companies now, by creating an antitrust exemption for others? This is such a complex issue that seems to me to be a really, I understand the intent, and I think the intent is a good one, but the challenge of correcting antitrust power by creating antitrust exemptions seems to me to be an inherent difficulty.
And I very much agree, and I'm not trying to disagree with the problem, just question some of the solution. Let me just ask a question for anyone that wants to with the remaining few minutes. The New York Times, the LA Times, the Washington Post, have any of those organizations ever put things out in print that were untrue or chose not to print things which were true?
Yes.
Okay, so if they do it, then we're really not talking about a difference in the case of Facebook or Google or any of the others. What we're talking about is who did it in the 18th and 19th century with impunity and who may be doing it today because of its market power. Is that true?
The gentleman, the time of the gentleman has expired, but if a witness wants to answer quickly, you may do so, if you understand the question.
We're not talking about when or who did it. We're talking about what laws apply to it. That's what I would say this is about.
Thank you. The gentleman